Uh, I just come down because I think I'm tired, to be honest. Tired of going like crisis to crisis and going through the same things again and again. And I don't really know how to put really into words. I just felt that I needed to be here to make up the numbers, just to show people that yeah, we're not happy with mediocrity. We're not happy with the way the world is globally, the way anti-blackness and how it seeps into society. It's been woven into the way that we go about everyday lives, and it's just upsetting to me. I guess that it's taken death or violence, black death or violence, to get people more to speak out. And yeah, but I mean, at least I'm happy that everyone is here.
And have you felt that it's been safe to be here today?
I mean, I think so. I think more or less. I mean, I wouldn't tell anyone that wouldn't feel safe to come here. But at the same time, for many black people, we've never felt safe. We've never felt welcome. So this is just.
Yeah, why did you come down today?
I came down today because over the last couple of weeks, well, it's been a long time, but I've felt really passionate about equality for all people, women, men, LGBTQ communities, and especially Black Lives Matter movement, because I just feel that for the length of time that the African or Black race has been there, there's just been a lot of conflicted interests in terms of colonialism and in terms of segregation and human rights. For me personally, it was more about, my grandmother was from Kenya and she was a Mau Mau fighter, but in the colonial way it was looked as a Mau Mau rebellion, and it meant a lot for me to be here because I wanted to support the movement and I wanted to bring an end to that type of lifestyle, because when I was little in Kenya, we had a 3-tier system, which meant that it was whites, Asians and blacks at the bottom. I was one of the first children to go to all-inclusive school, and I remember I was 4 years old. I went to school with my grandmother, and the first day I went, the first thing they said to me was, I didn't speak English because it was an English-speaking school, and I spoke Swahili at the time, and I answered my teacher in Swahili. I didn't really understand what they were saying, and I remember my teacher saying to me, "You can't speak that primitive language here," and I didn't understand what it meant, and I went home and told my gran, "What's a primitive?" And she told me what it meant, and I didn't like it. I didn't understand. Why was I different if this is the language my country spoke? So the second day of school, I lined up to go and get my lunch, and everybody, there was 200 children, and everybody got a spoon and a fork. I was given nothing because I was black and I was African. And I asked them, "Can I please have a fork or a spoon?" And she told me, my teacher told me, that you're an African, you can use your hands, it's what you're used to. And nobody would play with me, nobody would stand with me, nobody would sit with me. Next day I went to go and get to school. This is all in 1 week. So this is Wednesday now. I went to stand outside for the school bus that drove past me. And my grandmother walked a mile to take me to school. And she was 80 years old. And she told me, when we got there, they said the school bus drove past us. The teacher said they don't want black people in the same bus as them because some people aren't comfortable. They pay a lot of money to come hear your child's on a Save the Children place, and that's not something that they want. So on the Friday, school was over. I had one friend, she was called Nadia. She said, "You can come to my house for dinner." I went to her house. My gran dressed me up in the best that she could at that time because she worked as a sugar planter. And I went to Nadia's house because my name is a Muslim name. And Nadia's mom said, "The only African you talk to is your maid." And I had to go home. And it was really dangerous because the areas are divided into different areas. So you've got the Asian area, you've got the African area, which tends to be the slum area. And I grew up in a slum. So I had to look back myself, and my gran came and got me. And I remember my gran saying, "Don't worry, they just don't want to talk to you because you're not the same as them." And I asked her, "But we're all the same." I didn't understand that there was a difference, but she told me, "No, you're an African. Life is different for you." And to me, being here today is to try and bring it into that, because I'm only 29, and that was in 1996. So it meant so much to me to be here today, because I I don't want to be silent and things like that. I don't believe in oppression. I don't believe in systematic oppression. I don't believe in violence to get your movement. I know that there's the Martin Luther King and there's the Malcolm X approach. I think we should sit somewhere in the middle because it's 2020 and you shouldn't have divide. You should have equality for women. You should have equality for children's rights. You should have equality for care experience kids. You should have equality for men. And you should also have equality as a whole, because I don't want to have to teach my son this. My son's 10 years old. I sat him down yesterday and I asked him, because we did a news round kind of exercise that's homework. I asked him, what do you know what's happening this week? My son told me, people don't like somebody that looks like me in America because I'm black, and I don't understand why. So for me, it's more about challenging that mindset and making sure that it's a more positive mindset and equality.
And how long have you lived in Scotland?
I've lived in Scotland for 22 years, and I can truly say I grew up in the Highlands, so I wasn't subjected to racism in that sense. But as a care experienced young person, my case was handled differently, because in the community, sometimes there's image that if you're taken away by a social worker, you're a bad child. And my case wasn't handled sensitively because I was always returned back to my home, because that's what they want to do, is return children to homes. But I tried really hard to try and explain to social work and people that were looking after me that I can't go back home because my mom will take me back. And they were like, oh, we'll put in parental exercises, we'll put in sessions together to bond. And it wasn't about that. It was about the lack of cultural sensitivity. It was only when I was 15 and I had a social worker that was from South Africa. And she explained it perfectly. She said, this is going to be a challenging case because culturally she can't accept this child back because she's been removed by an agency. And that's going to be a problem to reunite them. It fell on deaf ears after she left. They did listen, she left, and I was returned back home, and my mum left again. And I had to go back and say to social work, like, this isn't the way it should be. And in my panels, I was given more of a voice and I was represented more, because they finally understood that, yes, we have the aim to return children back home, but for some children, that might not be the case. And how do we handle that? And how do we deal with that? And I fought really long and hard to have my voice heard. I always used to wait before my panels to have a voice and say anything, because I realized unless it's minuted, nothing will really happen. And for me, it's more about understanding that culturally there is going to be differences in terms of how we deal with education, how we deal with like teaching black education in schools, and not make it biased, make it understood that British colonial rule was awful for some people. It was absolutely awful. My grandmother was 80 before she went to school because she wasn't allowed to. And understanding that systems we have in place to support people, you need to understand that culturally you need to take that into account, because you could be putting children back into danger when you don't really realize it and you think you're doing the right thing. So for me, being here today is just about listening to everyone's point of views, but also understanding, how do we move forward as a society, as a country? How do we make sure that the laws and policies that we have effectively support people from all different backgrounds, and take into account that there is going to be areas that we need to improve on, and we can't just say everything's good, because there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. And do you think, finally, how do you feel your son's experience of being black or mixed
my
race?
son's mixed race. So his experience is, my son didn't know about race probably until he was, thankfully, until last year. He didn't really know about race until last year, because he always knew that people are people. Like, he always say, that's Jason with the red hair, or that's so-and-so with the blonde hair, or I'm Kino with the curly hair. So he never really understood that there was a difference. But I think, unfortunately, children will have to understand there is a difference at one point, but it's a positive thing, because you can learn from different cultures. I mean, look at the country that we live in. You've got different food from all different cultures, and we enjoy it. Different festivals, you've got different events, and I love that in schools you now teach things about Diwali and Eid. But I think there needs to be an understanding that we need to get history right and teach it right. We need to understand that I can take a slavery tour, which I have in Glasgow, and it can last 2 hours, the slavery tour, but there's nothing to show we were wrong in what we did. This is not fair how we treated people in years gone by. And we need to get over this idea that the British Empire was an amazing thing, because there was a lot of suffering in the hands of that. And I think that that's the type of thing that we should be doing more. We need to make sure that you're not a token black person in a job. You need to make sure that equality is done in the right way. It's not to tick a box. It's to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity. Your workplace should represent your population, because that's just how it is. Times are changing, and it needs to happen fast.
street sign. What about Ingram Street? I was on the news the other night there and they said to me, take down those street signs. Hell no! Where's our monument? Where is our museum?
What brought you down today?
So I don't agree with racism at all. I've been subjected to it myself because I'm half Arab and I often get questions about my background. My dad's Palestinian, so there's a lot of injustice there, and I kind of want to fight for his country because we can't have like businesses and stuff that we have there. And I've got lots of friends who are from different backgrounds, and I kind of want that everybody to have the same support that they all should have. Like, to me, everybody is equal. I've never judged anybody on their colour, and I just kind of want justice to happen.
And how did you feel about the criticisms about, you know, the dangers of a mass gathering?
So initially I was quite concerned because I am a key worker, so I do get a little bit worried about the number of people that come into where I work. But given the chat on Glasgow Live's post about the gatherings today, the more ignorance that I was kind of seeing and the more abuse that I was receiving because I believe that today should happen, it kind of made me more determined to want to come down because I was like, well, this is exactly what it is. Like, we can't wait 6 months until the pandemic clears up and we can start having gatherings of like more than 500 people. So, and as some of the posters are saying today, that racism is a pandemic and it's a worse virus than coronavirus is because that can be contained. But this has been going on for decades and centuries. When's it going to stop?
Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough!